Teddy Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, avid conservationist, part-time Greek god of trust-busting, and an incredible leader. But how did it begin? Quick history lesson. Teddy was born in Manhattan to Martha Stewart Bullock and Theodore Roosevelt Sr. Came down with crippling asthma, then beat Harvard, then beat his classmates, then beat his wife just died, and his mom died on the same day, but that's Debbie Downer. Became a state assemblyman for New York, became a cowboy and started a cattle ranch. Got married again, became the police commissioner for New York City, sniffed out corrupt cops in the New York City police force, fought in the war in Cuba with a little group called the Rough Riders, became the governor of New York City, then became vice president, then beat his opponent in the presidential race of 1900. When the Republican Party refused to let him run for a third term, he formed his own party, survived an assassination attempt, lost the election, went on safaris in Africa, almost fought in World War I, died, then went on to begin a career in Hollywood, starring in the 2006 Hollywood blockbuster Night at the Museum. But that's not what you're here for. You want to know about his leadership qualities. To go through in no particular order, he was so charismatic that he was completely uninvolved in his campaign for vice president. His friends and followers ran the campaign for him, and he won. Similarly, when interviewed, his staff remembered him fondly because he would remember their names, their families, and the happenings in their lives, which his successor, William Howard Taft, did not. An example of his empowering nature is that he was the first president to solve a labor dispute. In 1902, he sat down with the representatives of a coal strike and J.P. Morgan, not a nice guy, and sorted out a deal where the workers would work fewer hours for more money in exchange for no union representation. His willingness to engage with people's concerns and help them accomplish their goals is a clearly empowering characteristic. To speak to his communication skills, during the time of his presidency, Japan and Russia didn't like each other very much. They were in the middle of the Russo-Japanese War. Though typically not known as a peacemaker, Roosevelt did some persuading to make them not like each other not quite as much and negotiated the Treaty of Portsmouth, which earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1906. His confidence can be summed up in a single legendary quote: "Speak softly and carry a big stick, you will go far." This quote is directed towards his foreign policy, but it can be generalized to how he carried himself in everyday matters. Observant, he was a conservationist and a naturalist. Being observant was what he did for fun, but even if that's not convincing enough, you could pick any one of his policies to see his observant nature. I'm just going to pick one at random, the Hepburn Act. Merchants complained that some railroad rates were too high. Most people I know would be a bit too busy as president to pick up on things like that, but Teddy was pretty great. The Hepburn Act would give the Interstate Commerce Commission the ability to regulate railroad rates, and after much deliberation with Congress, he managed to pass a compromise that allowed them to set price ceilings. Goal-oriented. Roosevelt signed a whopping 144 executive orders every year, more than the 4 presidents before him combined. He was a get-things-done president that set the example of using a massive number of executive orders to pass legislation that amounted to the legendary presidency of another awesome Roosevelt. But that's a story for another day. As president, he set out to reduce corruption and break apart monopolized trusts, and given his legacy, he was clearly successful. Similarly, he set out to preserve America's natural beauty. He did this by creating more than 200 nature reserves of varying kinds. Trustworthy. This is one quality that he didn't have, considering that he was antitrust. Anyways, he was trustworthy because he brutally prosecuted and investigated corruption in his administration. For instance, in 1903, some politicians were stealing money from the Native American population, so he personally investigated and dealt with the incident. Accountable. As president, obviously, he had accountability to the Supreme Court and Congress, but the more influential force was certainly in the press. When he made a land grab to finish the Panama Canal in 1904, the press went after him for his persuasive methods. Adaptable. When the Republican Party refused to let him run for a third term, he created the Bull Moose Progressive Party to run against them completely unplanned. He did pretty well, too, beating the Republican nominee by a decent margin, but losing to the unsplit Democratic Party. Now onto the leadership goal defined. A leader's goal should be to inspire development within the team both personally and overall, while being able to effectively communicate and coordinate information to the organization to complete a common goal while maintaining respect and trust from its members. Teddy was known for welcoming and conversing with each of his housekeepers and staff members in the White House, making them feel important and inspiring them to work hard in their jobs. This also speaks to his effective communication because he understood the hard work each of them put into their jobs and their lives outside work, letting him inspire them more effectively. On the topic of coordinating information, Roosevelt was a master of all things info. He read a legendary 4 books per day, 1 before breakfast and 3 in the evening. On a less personal level, though, he also distributed information to the public more effectively than past presidents by developing a better relationship with the press and encouraging them to make the White House a primary subject of their publications. This allowed him to help the public see his reason and work towards a common goal with them and build their trust.